let me start by asking, was it as much fun to make as it appears to have been to be there?
I mean, it was so much fun to make because of this cast and crew. To make a film with Margaret Cho, is kind of like the den mother is so special, and the cast they're so funny, and they all understood the importance of a movie like this, and so I think the common goal was very galvanizing. But yeah, it's like we spent 2 weeks on the island together, and we stayed in like a bed and breakfast, and
not one of these houses.
Not one of those houses, but a kind of house that like my room shared an air vent with Joel Kim Booster's room, and I could hear him watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills with the rest of the cast, and they would like giggle, and it just like I was like, oh, this is the Bennett house, it's so cute. And Margaret was giving our actor who plays Keegan, Tomas Matos, like a bustier and fashion and clothes, just because Margaret was like, you should wear this stuff. And so it was just really fun to be around that kind of energy. It was hard. It was like the weather was really difficult. We had 2 hurricanes,
This was shooting last summer?
This was last August, September. And, we had a big hurricane while we were on the island that the water level rose in the bay. And so we were going to shoot one of those sunset scenes, and the water was above the dock, and we just looked at it being like, what do we do, And so we had to pivot really quickly and find other time in the schedule and hope that we got a pretty sunset, So it's I lost like 10 pounds out of like anxiety, because of things that we couldn't control. But I don't think I could have gone through with those difficulties if it weren't for the fact that it was like such a fun, group of people to be around.
So the scope of this, I mean, so you've made 2 films prior to this, both of which are really intimate and focused on small groups like families, and here you have just a massive cast compared to that, and just and in a party environment, and how, I mean, you've already been talking about this a little bit, but how was that adapting to that for you as a director, managing the scale of that size cast and production?
Yeah, I mean, I know what my strengths are as a director, and I'm always going to protect the heart of a movie. I think it would have been really easy for a film like Fire Island to like kind of dip into like superficial fluff, and I saw in Joel's script a real, emotional core, and I wanted to emphasize that. And so that felt familiar, but it was a really different, sense of scope, with the locations, the set pieces, and the ensemble cast. It was such a big cast, and I wanted to give each of them so much of my time and energy. And, you just have to understand as a director, like, okay, like in this scene, like who's the person I need to focus on, and in this coverage, who I need to focus on, and just be able to prioritize, and then like spread the wealth of my attention as much as possible. But the cast was also so distracted and like in love with each other that like I didn't have to hold their hands too much,
right.
But I think it was a real learning lesson for me to just be able to herd cats that way.
So, as with any great Jane Austen, you have, like, there's the primary relationships and the primary romance that you're following throughout the story, but then there's also the social world and the different social, the strata. And I think you balance those beautifully in the film. And again, it's such a departure from your previous work where you're like, man, it's not just about the scope, but it's about you really do track the emotional through line of the key relationships and then pull back. And as a viewer, I felt totally like I knew where I was, I knew what was going on, and I was fascinated and drawn in by all of it in terms of the broader social dynamic of what's going on.
I mean, like, thank God for Jane Austen. You know, we had a really good blueprint, and Joel and I, you know, really trusted in the structure of you know, her narrative. You know, we also like had great adaptations to watch. You know, the BBC adaptation is Joel's favorite. The Joe Wright film is my favorite. The Joe Wright version is my favorite, and you know, I think there's just a real elegance to you know, the plot of Pride and Prejudice, and you know, we had to make adjustments, obviously, to fit it to you know, gay culture Fire Island, but it was a really, in a weird way, the parallels were really obvious. You know, like I love that, like the big Netherfield ball is the weekly underwear party. You know, like that makes so much sense. You know, and like once you know that that's the Netherfield ball, like then you know that like Darcy and Lizzie should have a moment on the dance floor together. You know, and so like it just started to click into place in a very fun way.
Could you talk about how this project came to you? Was this a script that you sought out, like you knew about and went after, or did they come to you? How did this become an Andrew Ahn film?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be like very honest because I think it's like a fun story that I don't tell super often, but it's out there in the public. Fire Island was initially at Quibi. It was a Quibi show, and I interviewed for it and I didn't get it. It went to a different director. And my joke is that Jeffrey Katzenberg didn't think I was funny enough. But I,
Who's laughing now?
But I know, I like that we also kind of prod Quibi a little bit in the movie. But yeah, I didn't have any hard feelings, you know, like I was like, if that's the director they want, great, totally fine. And then Quibi shuttered, and then a year into the pandemic, I got an email saying, hey, like Fire Island is set up at Searchlight as a feature, would you be interested? And I read it, and I think, you know, in a weird way, I think I was better positioned, or, you know, even more excited to make it as a feature at that point. You know, a year into the pandemic, I hadn't seen my friends in a long time. I hadn't like gone out to a club and, you know, like gone dancing and drinking and, you know, being stupid. And so I saw in the script so much of what was missing in my life in that moment. And so I was like, I really want to do this, you know, even more than before. And I pitched my little heart out to, you know, Searchlight, and was really lucky that they saw my vision for it, and, you know, got to make the movie.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you came on, was Joel Kim Booster was in the, obviously he wrote it, but was also in the lead role. Was any of the other cast in place, or talk about casting it? Yeah,
so Bowen was already in place. Okay. Joel had written it for him and Bowen, and that's part of what I love too about the you know, about the project, was that Joel and Bowen are real life friends, and I love being able to show a friendship on screen that's authentic. Like it's such a privilege and a treat. You don't have to work to make people like each other, you know. But we had to figure out the rest of the casting, and you know, we had the group, the main group, and Margaret Cho. Like it was kind of a no-brainer. Interestingly, in the script, that character was gender swapped from Pride and Prejudice to be an older gay man. But then Margaret reached out to the production and said, "Hey, I love, Joel and Bowen. I'm really interested in, being a part of this." And Joel and I looked at each other and we're like, "Oh, like this makes so much sense. Like she is Mrs. Bennet, And so we cast her. Matt Rogers is really good friends with Bowen and Joel, and I just thought he reminds me so much of a gay Jenna Malone, and Jenna Malone plays Lydia in the Joe Wright adaptation, and I was like, yeah, like you're the one that's gonna get into trouble, and I just think he's so funny. And then Torian Miller, who plays Max, Joel had cast him in a play in Chicago, and he is just so funny, so natural. And then Tomas Matos was like a total discovery. This was their first feature film. They went to that, famous New York high school, the Fame High School, LaGuardia, and they just have this natural charisma that we really loved, and we got them all together, and it was like, oh, this is right. Wow. So we were really fortunate. The hardest casting was Mr. Darcy. That was the trickiest one. Joel told me, he was like, I need to be attracted to them, and that's already kind of annoying, But
he's fantastic.
Conrad is amazing.
Their scenes together are just really, really beautiful.
I love that Conrad is just kind of has like a different speed from the rest of the cast. It's a bit of a record scratch, and I love that about the the character. But I remember we did a bunch of chemistry reads with Joel, and really great actors too. And each time Joel felt like he had the upper hand in the power dynamic. And Conrad was the only actor who flustered Joel. And during the chem test, Joel went up on his lines. He forgot his lines, and he wrote the script. And I immediately was like, "Oh, this is right. Like this is really good." And for me, it was just extra gratifying that that Conrad is Asian American, I was just so excited that we have a gay Asian Mr. Darcy. Like that feels so special.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you bring anyone onto the film who you'd worked with previously on your crew? Any of your leads or?
I had tried so hard. It was a real learning experience for me because it was my first union production, and a lot of my previous crew aren't union, and so that was an obstacle. It was also in New York, and I don't know as much crew out there. Some of my crew is busy, and so we really had to meet a bunch of people. I think we ultimately ended up with the right people. It's a little bit like, things work out for a reason, like Quibi, like me coming on board when it's a feature. Like, I really believe in that. And so, we had a really, lovely crew that, that I know I'll work with again in the future.
That's great. Let me open it up to the room here. I'm sure other people have questions as well. Yeah, back there.
What was the process of choosing the music? Because it's so good.
Yeah, we worked with our music supervisors at 20th Century, so Patrick Houlihan and Natalie Anderson, and it was really funny because they're not gay, so we just had to try and do a big kind of gay Fire Island education, and I love that Patrick would say Dua Lipa. He kept calling her Dua Lipa, and I thought that was really cute for a straight man, they really found beautiful music that made the island feel really rich. Our editor, Brian Cates, who I think is the best in the biz, he edited Short Bus and Tamara Jenkins's films, so The Savages and Private Life. I loved him, and he made a couple of choices in here. The 2 Perfume Genius songs were his idea, and I love them. And Pure Imagination, the Willy Wonka, cover at the beginning, like that was Brian's idea. I worked with Joel for certain songs. So Noah, Will dancing to Kim Petras' Heart to Break, that was a Joel idea. So it was kind of a group effort. But we knew that it was super important. And I think initially Searchlight didn't totally realize how much music there was going to be in this movie. And then when they saw the cue sheet, they're like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. But now we're like $1 million over budget in music. So we had to do some really smart post-production shuffling.
Speaking of music, could you talk about the scene where Bowen sings?
Yeah.
That is an amazing scene.
Yeah.
Was that as scripted, or was that something he brought and just wanted to do?
I believe it was scripted as Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? Is that like the Ronettes or something? But kind of a throwback, like an oldie. And Joel and I talked about it, and we said, ultimately, like we should ask Bowen like what he would want to sing. And Bowen sent over a list of music, and it was a lot of Carpenters and then some like Robin, but then and it was Britney Spears sometimes. And I was listening to the lyrics, thinking about it for the movie, and it just made so much sense. It's very Jane Bennett, like. I just really thought it was super special, and it's always really fun for me. Like, I've seen this movie with audiences a couple of times, and it's always fun for me for people to start to realize that it's Britney Spears, But yeah, and then we wanted to bring it back again for that big, kind of rom-com moment, and we were trying to find a cool queer, artist to cover the song, and Joel really loves that band Muna. And they did such a beautiful cover, and we were so happy with it, that we wanted to really feature it. So, it's one of my favorite moments in the movie.
It's fantastic.
The Britney Spears karaoke and then the coming back later in the film.
Other questions? Don't be shy. Yeah.
I've never been to Fire Island, so thank you. That seemed amazing.
Oh, cool.
And I can't wait to go. Have you been? I mean, did you have that experience? I feel like you gave away a lot of the secrets, especially with some of the darker scenes, and I'm so glad that you showed that side of life. I mean, what has your experience been like?
Yeah, we didn't want to shy away from the fact that, like, Fire Island isn't, like, a perfect place, like it still exists in this world, it still exists in this country, and so there is going to be racism and classism, it's not immune to those things, and I didn't want to sugarcoat it, and Joel didn't either, so it was really we wanted to show that part of the island. I had never been to Fire Island before, and I was very honest about that when I interviewed for it. But I had friends who had gone, and I knew a little bit about the history of the island. One of my favorite poets, Frank O'Hara, famously died on the island. He got run over by a car on the beach, which is why they don't have cars on the island anymore. When I got the job, I was like, I'm going to go as much as I can. I had been to other gay havens like Palm Springs and Provincetown, so I had a sense of what this trip symbolized, but I didn't know the trappings of it like, Joel did. And so I just asked Joel a ton of questions. I went as much as I could during pre-production. My cinematographer, Felipe Vardere, and I, we went to an underwear party together, which is really funny, and we were like shot listing in our underwear, and then we ran into Joel Kim Booster there, like out in the wild, like he was just there having fun, which was really great to see because I could see how much fun he was having, and I could see the joy that he was trying to capture in the movie, just kind of unfolding in front of me as we were hanging out that night. And so, I definitely still have a bit of an outsider's perspective, but I think that that made me more objective in a way, and I think the characters have a little bit of an outsider's perspective, in the film, and so I didn't feel like I couldn't tell the story. I just had to, do the right preparation, make the right, kind of collaborative choices, and really utilize Joel to help me fill in my like Fire Island, knowledge gaps.
I wanted to ask another question about working with Joel. So he wrote the script, starred in it, and was also a producer on it. I'm curious, when you came on board, did you suggest any changes to the script? Did it evolve a bit when you came on as director? And sort of what was that relationship like working with him, where he's wearing those different hats throughout the shoot?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like Joel has written a lot of television, but this is his first feature screenplay. And actually the screenplay was stitched together Quibi episodes, and there was some smoothing over that had to happen kind of in that process of making it into a feature. My big thing was I wanted to kind of strengthen the romances a little bit more. Mm-hmm. The film is so much about chosen family and about the friendship, which is what I love about it. But I wanted to feel a little bit more of that, like sexiness, that romance, the beach date scene, that's set to that Perfume Genius song that doesn't have any dialogue. Like I wanted to expand that, So there are a lot of directorial things that affected the script in some ways. And then there are just production challenges. Like casting Conrad, he was never specified as Asian American in the script, but having him be Asian American actually changed some of the dialogue and the way that these two characters would interact. And so that was something that Joel and I had to work on. And then the big rom-com moment where Charlie professes his love to Howie initially actually was supposed to take place kind of from the harbor, like as the ferry was pulling out, and Charlie would run and talk to Howie on the ferry, and then Charlie would jump into the water, and then Howie would jump into the water, and they would kiss in the water. And we were so excited to shoot it, and I had told my stunt guy, I was like, I want to make sure we have a stunt double that jumps into the water like a gay boy, because that's so important. And then we tested the water per SAG, and it came back as like toxic, basically.
Oh, God.
It had 10 times the amount of E. coli, that's safe. And then they told me that the test only tests up to 10 times, so it could even be more. And like Bowen was gonna go to the Emmys the next week, and I just was like, I don't want to kill Bowen Yang. I don't want him to like diarrhea at the Emmys, So we had to find a new ending, and so that was a real kind of group effort. Joel had a vision for it, but he was also acting, and we were already shooting at that point. So it's it really takes a village. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we found something that didn't involve the actors getting into E. coli infested waters.
That's good.
Yeah.
Very wise. It's kind of, I didn't know that this had was initially intended for Quibi. It does not, and I don't feel the episodic nature of it at all. It feels very cohesive.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing I love about it is how you embrace the rom-com elements and also subvert them at the same time throughout. I mean, that's what's so fun about the film.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, that the central relationship of the movie is actually a platonic friendship. Like, that to me feels so queer and modern, you know? I think there's something about queer people. Like, we really value, our friend group in a way that, I think it is in some ways more significant than like our romantic relationships. And so that felt really important. And I think just, Joel and I both really love rom-coms, but, we also wanted to use the genre as a bit of a Trojan horse to talk about like elements of the queer community that, need work, and so that it just felt so smart. And I, as a director, I didn't want that to get smoothed over. If anything, I wanted to emphasize those things so that it felt substantial. I think a lot about, I think comedy is only funny if you you acknowledge the pain that it comes out of, and so like that was really important for me to ground this and make it actually like feel joyful. Like I wanted you to like feel excited by the end of the film.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah. So it looked like it was just a blast to be on that set and like all the cast working together. Had a lot of funny moments. How much like room did you give for like them improvising and ad-libbing on set?
Yeah, I really wanted them to like have as much fun as possible. I'm working with amazing comedians. I definitely created an environment where they could do that. But it's interesting, like working with comedians. For many of the cast, it was their first movie or their first bigger movie where they had a leading role. And I remember the first week of the shoot, a couple of them would come up to me after a setup and they'd be like, was that okay? Like, was it funny? And I was like, it was great. And I realized it was because they didn't hear laughter, And so I started throwing takes, like the first take of each setup, I would just laugh really loud so that they felt like it was working, and then they would relax into it a bit. And the sound people were like, what are you doing? And I was like, it's a plan. I know. Don't worry. But yeah, like so many of the best moments in this film, these like throwaway lines, like were just like them having fun and like me giving them the room to do that, and finding moments to brainstorm ideas. Like that joke about I was an early investor in Quibi, like that wasn't scripted. That was a brain trust in the moment, where I said like, oh, like how did she lose her money? Like we should talk about it, and Joel and Margaret and Bowen and Matt were like thinking about it, and I think it was Joel that was like, oh, like let's take a pot shot at Quibi, So I as a director who's mostly done dramas, and I really wanted to do a good job with this comedy, like I scanned the script and was like, is there a joke opportunity here? And on set I would bring it up and like see what the cast would do.
I love the line about, what is it, Lindsey Graham and
Lindsey Graham in The Parent Trap.
In The Parent Trap.
Yeah, that was in the moment. That was totally amazing. In the moment.
And he goes, I'd see that.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah. And so that, it was really fun to be able to like guide the cast into something and like utilize their talent for like awesome moments.
Well, Andrew, I want to end with a really corny question. In when you introduced the film, you mentioned your association with Film Independent, and you did a
screenwriting lab, the directing lab project involved. And I'm just curious, like thinking back on where you were when you were first in Project Involve, like what advice, what would you say to that person today coming off this film and with your experience now with Spa Night, with Driveways, and now this, like looking back, where you were at that time and what your expectations were?
I mean,
what would the wise Andrew Ahn have to say?
I'd be a little bit afraid that if I like told my younger self something that I would somehow like butterfly effect another path, and like it would be like Back to the Future, where like my film career slowly fades from the
it wouldn't
photograph.
go well. I think you're right. Yeah.
Because I might screw myself up, but you know, I remember like in Project Involve, Francisco and Jane had brought in a guest, and it was James Shamus, and he spoke to our group, and he said, like, you know, I think it's very cool that I'm here talking to you all, but like there's nothing I can really say that's gonna like change anything. Like you just need to go out there, like you need to make stuff, you know. And I was sitting there being like, oh. And so I left early. I was like, you know, I was like, I don't know what James is going to tell me. Like, he's already telling me that, like, there's nothing he can say. And so I went home and I, like, started working on, you know, a script. And there is something about, like, you know, it's like you want to be a filmmaker. Like, you ultimately have to make things, you know. And it doesn't matter if they're super small, you know. Like, I remember going to Sundance with, you know, my second short film, and you know, someone asked, you know, that really annoying question, like, what was your budget? And we went down the line of each filmmaker in that shorts program. And, you know, I had spent like $8,000 in credit card debt, you know, to make my short. And another filmmaker said that they spent $120,000. And I was like, we're in the same place, you know, and I spent like multiple times less than you. And so I think it's, you know, it's like use the resources that you have and tell a great story, and you know, like enjoy the process. You know, at the end of the day, I think what makes that possible is having a community. You know, like filmmaking is not a solo endeavor, and I think a lot of people, like, whether it's the ego of being a director or just being scared to ask for help, like, you know, you really do think about it like this is on me. But if you have a group of friends, if you meet collaborators, like that makes it so much more fun and also just more achievable. And so it's like I'm so thankful for you know, these organizations like Film Independent that have you know, put me in touch with people, like given me a network. You know, my first TV job I got because the executive on that show was a fellow Project Involve fellow in my class, you know, and she had remembered me, you know, and that was my first, you know, like paid gig. And so I really love being able to, just like foster a sense of community, like do events like this where you can all like get to like share a communal experience, and get to know each other.
Absolutely. Andrew, thank you so much. Congratulations on the film.
Thank you.